Hello, Ed.
Hey, Ira.
How are you doing?
I am well. How are you today?
Good. And welcome everybody from Googleization Nation and LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. We're here. I'm here today again. I'm live streaming with my long-term friend and colleague and now author, Ed Krow.
It's
So
great to be here. It's good to see you again.
yeah, it's our new meeting way, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, we
yeah,
should all be getting quite comfortable in this format now.
yeah, absolutely. And my biggest disappointment was not buying Zoom and Teledoc a few weeks ago when I had an opportunity. Before, it was like, it's a gradual, it's going up and down,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's still time to get in. And all you need is a good crisis to
Exactly.
change your outlook on things.
Yep.
So, hey, I
Yep.
appreciate you being here. You've been around HR a lot longer. I'm sort of the outsider coming in. But there's a lot of things, and we have a similar philosophy.
Hmm.
But I wanted to really pick your brain. But I'm going to put up here this first. Make sure everybody knows how to get it there. Here's your new book,
Yes.
Strategic HR. It's on Amazon. Is that
It's
right?
on Amazon or my website, edkrow.com. Yep.
Yeah, very simple. So if we take that down a minute, you can see just edkrow.com. It's very easy. You can get it. It's a great book. I had the opportunity to review it ahead of time, and very practical, and more so these days than
Hmm.
ever. It's as I keep telling people, even with mine, recruiting in the age of Googleization. The original title was "When the Shift Hits Your Plan,"
Hmm.
and it certainly hit a lot of plans.
Yes.
Personal, professional, business, political.
Right.
It's certainly been quite the disruption, and now I was sort of still kicking myself is maybe I should have stuck with that, but I'm playing with it pretty well, and we'll roll with the punches.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I definitely wanted to talk to you about, and we'll bring this in because I also
Okay.
know you're certified with John Maxwell as well, right, with the
Yes.
leadership
Yep.
programs,
Yep.
and
Absolutely.
we certainly got a leadership gap going on.
We do.
Leadership's going to need to be much more different in this VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But let's start with a couple things because
Okay.
one is I hope everything's going well with you and your family and your team
It
and your
is. We're
clients. Yeah,
healthy, and in these days, that's the battle right there. Stay healthy, and you've got
yeah.
everything.
Go back
Yeah.
to Maslow's.
You
Safe,
know it.
safe and secure, right?
We're back at the
So
bottom level again.
we're at the base of the pyramid. So yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of people working from home. I mean, there's a lot of people still working. I mean,
Yes,
we think there's
absolutely
a
right.
total
Yeah.
shutdown. So there's certainly a lot of people that are still working. A lot of companies that are still
Hmm.
in business. Right before the call, you and I were talking. I've had an incredibly 2 busy weeks. I was shocked when I was still getting some people contacting me, new clients, not necessarily.
Yep.
We have a lot of existing. I have a lot of healthcare clients,
Sure.
some distribution. They're certainly going full. They're full bore. They're going
Hmm.
well. Fortunately, I didn't have a lot of retailers and a lot of restaurants. But I had call centers and a lot of people that were in the living a digital world in the first place.
Hmm.
But I started to get calls from telehealth and distributors and HVAC contractors. Again, the trades are other than builders, but
Right.
we still have problems. I mean,
We
air
do.
conditioners still go out. We still get leaks. Electric goes out. A lot of people are trying to figure out what has to happen in a home.
Right.
Before now you have 3 or 4 people, sometimes larger,
Hmm.
5 or 6 people, trying to get on the internet at the same time. Didn't have enough outlets. Didn't have enough power. Didn't have enough circuits. Didn't have enough furniture so,
Right.
to be able to do that. I actually, my our podcast yesterday, our guest said he's got his sister and her family moved in. I mean,
Oh wow.
they lived in an apartment in Manhattan. Now he lives
They
outside of
got out.
Westchester. He lives
Sure.
out of Westchester, so it's not like they escaped the New York challenge.
Right.
But so he's got a lot of people there. But so the people, so a lot of times that you need outsiders to do work. Certainly Amazon. Anybody who's delivering packages, these
The
days.
grocery stores are hiring.
It's still busy. Yeah, Instacart. I mean, so even Instacart's hiring 300,000 people. Amazon's hiring 100,000 people. CVS is hiring 50,000 people. These may not be the career jobs you want, but there's going to be a lot of movement.
Rich job, right?
Yeah, maybe. Or people are just taking an opportunity to go to a growing company from one that was struggling. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to get your feel. You've got a pretty good feel out of that. So there's two sides of this. There's the strategy side, which I always play on. What's the work trends look like? What's going to happen in recruitment, talent acquisition, engagement? And then there's some of the compliance issues. There's the HR side of things that are going to change, and we get into policies. So let's start with this. Let's say I hope I want to say I hope we go back and work in 2 weeks at Easter, but I'm pretty frightened by that. I'm pretty frightened by that process from
I
a
don't suspect it's going
humanity standpoint.
Right. I don't think we're going to turn the faucet back on fully.
Yeah. So but that brings up the point. At some point, and and for those of you who think this is the apocalypse and it's the end of the world, it's not. In 12 to 18 months, which is an eternity if we're still sheltering in place, and physical distancing rather than social distancing, there's obviously going to be a lot of hardships and there's going to be a lot of problems. But we're all, by the way, your hair's still pretty short. Mine's getting a little straggly. So, if I'm in another month or so, I'm going back to my college days.
Well, fortunately, I hit my hairstylist up the 2 days before kind of the lockdowns hit. So I'm good to go for another, 10 days, 14 days.
Oh yeah. Well, I usually go for, I have a little less than you do. So I usually go 6, 8, 10 weeks.
Okay.
But I'm approaching that now. So it's starting to get,
there you go.
I'll be a little scruffy, but there's going to be a lot of people like that.
Sure,
and then my wife's worried about her hair color and I think so, which leads me to, when we get this all clear, whatever that is, and that's going to be challenging.
Right.
And I don't think it's going to be, hey, everybody in the country goes back to work on Monday. This isn't like a blizzard or a snowstorm or a hurricane or anything like that.
Right.
This is going to be gradual.
Mm-hmm.
But the longer it goes and the more workers are out of work and getting used to this remote work thing, what do you, I've got my opinion, but I'm going to ask you.
Sure.
What are some of the challenges you expect employers to face? So it's finally we both live in Pennsylvania, but in, I think, 25 states in the country that are on shelter in or lockdown, variations of that. They say, hey, it's lifted. You can do, we're lifting we're lifting all the shelter in place. And as of Monday, 7 a.m., you can go back to work as normal. What's that look like? And for companies, what are some of the challenges? Because I don't think, just like they didn't plan for the pandemic, they're not planning the reverse of it. They're not planning how do we get back to work. So what do you think are some of the challenges?
Well, I think there are a couple, and let's start with the obvious ones first. So we've told people for years that they can't be productive at home, they can't work at home, we don't have the structure. Well, we're proving all of that wrong. And so I think there's going to be a pushback from some employees saying, well, okay, I just had to work at home for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it was. Why do I need to come to the office now? Why can't I've been productive? I'm doing my job. We haven't missed a beat. Why do I need to come back into the office? So I think you're going to start to see that. I think, too, that as the economy rebounds from this, and it will, whether it's quick or long, we don't know, but we definitely know that it will come back. And that's going to provide workers who have been dissatisfied with how they've been treated in this time an opportunity to jump. And I saw something very disturbing a couple days ago, I guess now, where there were companies that had installed software on their laptops that would take random screenshots and photos through the camera to ensure that their remote people were working.
Wow.
If I'm one of those employees, first off, I'm putting a little smiley face right on top of that camera so that you can't find me. But I'm thinking, wow, that's the level of trust that you have in me. And so I think that certainly, and I'm only speaking for me, that if that was me and that's how you were treating me, man, I'd be gathering my resume now and figuring out I got to get someplace to a company that trusts me and values me for what I can bring. So those are the obvious ones. I think the not so obvious ones are there's going to be some post-traumatic stress. I mean, you don't go from 3-4 weeks longer of this social isolation, this physical isolation, and then throw everyone back into the workplace where they're touching the same coffee pots and they're sharing a cubicle. And people are going to be afraid for a period of time. And that's to be expected, because the one thing that most folks really aren't thinking about is they're thinking that, well, gosh, if we just shelter in place, this virus is going away. No, it's not going away. The virus won't go away, right?
Again, this isn't the snowstorm that it's going to melt when the sun comes out.
So we have to have this plan of, okay, this thing going to be seasonal? Is it just something we're going to live with now? What do we do as a vaccine? I mean, those are things that are certainly beyond my pay grade to discuss. But I think in terms of business leadership, how the heck do we get our people back in to an environment in this, what will be our new normal, where these kinds of things, where folks are scared perhaps to be around other people again, knowing that the virus is still potentially active out there, is going to be something that we'll have to discuss sooner rather than later as business leaders.
Yeah, and again, it's not going away. I mean, that pandemic will go away. We'll get it under control. It'll be back similar to what the flu, was, and other illnesses that circulate around. So, but people were somewhat careless. I mean, people got comfortable. It's like, oh, I got the flu. I'll be out a couple of days and I'll go home. And certainly there were deaths, but they were old people or they were compromised people. I mean, it was pretty unusual to hear someone who was healthy, a 40-year-old healthy guy or woman that gets the flu and dies.
Right.
That was the exception. And again, you probably heard more things of people in accidents and other things that happen.
You hear all the stats, right?
So I think there's sort of a sense that we'll get back to that level of normalcy. But this, for at least the next 12 to 18 months, we don't know what the immunity is going to be. We don't know what the cycle is going to be. We don't know if there's going to be a variation of it, which again goes all well beyond our grade to be able to determine that. We can just listen, but it creates challenges for employers. So there's things that I've been talking about, and again, I've been attending, just a lot of summits and trying to listen to people and try to engage with people that are a lot smarter than I am, and also that have different backgrounds. Right. But little things that I was thinking about, we talked about our haircuts, so let's say this goes for another month and then they start to ease it and we go out. So we're allowed to, you and I pretty much worked virtually anyway.
Exactly.
But now everybody's called back to work. So there's a whole group that says, but my kids are out of school yet.
Daycares aren't available.
Right. Why do I have to be there? Or I'm a little concerned about sending my child to daycare because before it was a.
They were germ fests.
I was a petri dish. I was thinking of a petri dish. Yeah, I mean it was already a problem.
Right,
so a lot of schools are definitely closed till the end. Child care is going to ramp up. Parents are going to be concerned. Why can't I work from home? But then it's also people haven't had. Their haircut. They haven't had their dental appointments. They haven't had their doctor appointments. All this stuff's going to be postponed. And a lot of these people are workers, and they're going to say, "Well, I need time off." Well, no, we've been shut down for 2 months. You got to get back to to full bore. So there's a couple of things I looked at, and you hit the one on the head. Is when 7 a.m. rolls around and you're expecting the doors open and everybody to clock in. What's that look like? The next thing is how do you help your workforce and preparing them ahead of time? How do you prepare them to ease fears? What's new? What's that look like? It's not just going back to work and show up at your desk or show up on the line. It's here's the new precautions. And then what do you do? Is everybody going to get their temperature checked when they walk through the door?
Right.
By the way, this sounds like sci-fi. If this
It
would have
does.
been a meme months ago,
Exactly.
weeks ago. But going to the bar, this is what's happening in places like China and South Korea,
Mhm.
Singapore. If you go to get your hair cut or a manicure or to the gym,
Mhm.
they're not looking for your ID. At the door, they're checking your temperature.
Sure.
You know, if you're coughing, sneezing,
You're
you're not
out.
allowed in.
Right. Right.
Are employers going to do that? And then the question to you is, are there any challenge? I mean, what are the, where do we
Right.
get,
Right.
where does logic, prevention start crossing the line into HIPAA violations?
Well, yeah. I mean, certainly that's the obvious one that comes to mind. I'll tell you one of the other things that I'm hoping is a change, and that's that if this pandemic is teaching us one thing, it's stay the heck home when you're sick. And
Right.
I really feel like, whether it's the flu or the common cold or anything else, the pressure that we put on people to produce, because if your rear end's not in the chair, you're not working sort of mentality,
Right.
we're proving all of those myths false as we speak. And so when we think about being healthy and think about the social norms, I mean, is shaking hands, should we be shaking hands after this? Should we be shaking hands during flu season? I mean, just those common sorts of
Right.
things. I don't know. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm just saying these are things that could change the way that we conduct business socially. Do we have to be in front of a customer, or can we do something like this? The old, well, can you come in for a meeting? Well, do I really have to drive an hour for us to have a half-hour meeting and drive an hour
Right.
back to my
Right.
office? I mean, it's silliness, and we're proving that those things are time wasters. Now, the flip side is, in talking to my 24-year-old, she was just told she'll be working from home for another 2 weeks, and her response was, "Oh, like she is ready to go back." So she's
Right.
fully productive at home. She has access to everything she needs. She misses the interaction with her coworkers and the vibrancy of
And
the
and
office.
for which shatters the millennial myth. It's like,
Right,
hey, all they care about is being in front of screens.
right. They don't.
Which hasn't been accurate for years. They
No.
were efficient. They want to, let's be in front of our screens. It's why do I have to call somebody to send them a text to say I'll be right there? Or what
Right,
are you doing tonight?
right.
Why do I have to get on a phone call? Why do I have to do that? It's a hassle. So they're really efficient, but they were doing that to socialize.
Well, sure, and I
Social
think
media.
too. You look at the spring breakers, and that's Gen Z. Just to be clear, you and I know this,
Yeah.
but the greater world thinks that's the millennials. No, it's not the millennials,
Yeah,
folks.
I always tell the millennials that for anybody under 41 is
Right,
considered a millennial, and
right,
that's
yeah,
you
yeah.
get blamed for
Uh,
for the future generations as well.
so you know, Gen Z, while we're still figuring them out, one of the things that we thought was, well, they're going to be even more comfortable in the virtual environment. Now, one can argue they were still taking off to spring break because they didn't really grasp the seriousness of what was going on. And sure, I think that's definitely a big part of it. But I think there's also the part of it of they wanted that socialization. In many cases, these folks had been already sent home from college and
Right.
told, "Hey, you've got to go away." And so we were hearing you need to get outside, you need to go do things. Well, that's what they did, albeit in large groups of people, which was not a good idea.
Right.
But
Right.
I think those are fundamental questions that business leaders are going to have to answer. What kind of culture do I need to develop based on the experiences now that people have had over the course of this quarantine? Because I think what people are going to want in their workplace from a culture is going to significantly shift.
Hmm. Yeah, and on Tuesday this week, my last live stream was with Lena Graves, and she's got to keep an eye on this. In fact, she's looking for some speakers too, so I'll
Okay.
promote it. In fact, I might have taken the slide down, but anyway, in October she's got an event coming up in Orlando. Hopefully, we'll be past that.
Right.
Culture. It's called Culture Connects. So
Okay.
it's culture, and then it's CONNEXT.
Okay.
So not
Culture. Next. Got it. Yeah.
yeah, connects. And she's actually donating all the proceeds to charities and nonprofits.
Nice.
After that, yeah. So she's changed the emphasis on that. But it was all about company culture, the importance of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talked the other day, it was like, so you have a company, and a lot of company cultures were fragile before. They were already vulnerable. You have 70%. According to Gallup, we still have 70% disengagement. At work. And now all of a sudden, going back to your example in the beginning of somebody monitoring, arbitrary screenshots of you being in place. What happened? How do you have a new culture? This is a new culture. The bar's been reset. And now we have people, maybe you decide it's going to be remote. You still have a company culture, even though it's 100% remote, 50% remote, occasionally remote.
Right.
And that's been a challenge for a lot of companies up to this point. But it wasn't like, hey, we're thinking of going gradual. Our plan is next year. We're going to have a new policy in place. We're going to allow. This happened overnight.
Right. And yeah, if you look back through history, some of the coolest things happened when things changed quickly, right? Human ingenuity is just an amazing thing. And so when I think about what's happening right now, and I see more and more CEOs coming out and saying, hey, I'm foregoing my salary this year. Most people say, okay, great, they're doing that because their workers are suffering. I look at that and say, yeah, okay, that's part of it. But I think some of these folks are pretty smart in terms of, I need to show that I'm in this too, not just from a monetary perspective, but that we're all being asked to go above and beyond right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so and that core piece of leadership principle doesn't change, right? That what we expect from our leaders is someone that we can trust. And, you can see all the stats right now on what leaders people are trusting, whether it's their governor or the president or a medical expert or all these other things. And yet, how many of them trust their business leaders to get them through this from a business perspective, to make sure that the business is going to survive after this? And as we mentioned at the top, certainly some businesses are absolutely going gangbusters right now. Mm-hmm. Others are going to struggle to get by. What does the food and beverage, the hospitality industry look like in the next 3, 4, 6 months? Is it going to be a huge rebound? Disney's got its doors closed. Universal has its doors closed, right? Unheard of. So when they finally get to open up, is it going to be an absolute crush of people going there that couldn't go for the last 3 months? Or are people
spending all those checks that they just got, right?
Exactly. Or are they going to say, don't want to be around all those people? We don't know.
Right.
Part of me, and this is just Ed talking, thinks it's going to be a crush. Like, people are going to be so tired of being pent up that it's going to be that rubber band effect, and they're going to say, we need to get the heck out. And the only reason that I think that is because you hear about people defying orders now to stay in place at the peak of the epidemic. So I think that there's going to be a certain extent of people that want to get back to work in terms of going to the office. But I still come back to, people are used to now, I'm going to work for a little bit. I'm going to walk the dog,
absolutely,
back in, and I'm going to do this. And I'm still getting work done. I'm still being productive. And maybe I even feel better about myself. Well, heck, what more could you want out of an employee than someone who is engaged, who's able to take care of themselves physically and emotionally, and still be there for you?
Right.
Now,
so both of us have lived in kind of second and, smaller communities, cities, but smaller communities.
Right.
So, we complain about a 15-minute traffic jam. For like New York City, people who live in and around the metropolitan area, New York and Los Angeles, 2 and 3 hour commutes each way was unheard of. It was commonplace, not unheard of. Yeah. So now all of a sudden it's like, I've got time. I so, I've enjoyed time with my family. I've started to take walks. I got more comfortable. I've been able to squeeze in things that I wasn't able to do before.
Right.
I sort of like that.
Hmm.
And so I think, I agree. I think people are going to want to get back to socializing. But again, traveling on a train for 2 hours each way was not necessarily socializing, was just an
No.
extension of work.
No, because if you were on those trains, people were, on their iPads, they were on their lap, they were doing work for that
Yeah,
time. And yet, I'm not convinced they were completely productive because too much going on around you, right?
right.
And so you're probably just answering some emails or, well, again, I can do that from home. And so this shift that's going to happen is going to come back to a bit of I'll use the term revolution in the American workforce of people saying, I was productive before, I can still be productive. There's no reason we can't take this and modify what my work looks like. And for one, I'm all for it. Pay people to get results. So let's not worry about whether their rear end's in a seat in the office, right? I mean, my neighbor is a quality engineer. And his company is essential right now. They're still working. They're a biotech sort of firm, and he does not have to go to the plant every day. But he's expected to be logged in on his computer for 9 hours a day. He said, Ed, when I'm at the plant, I'm barely in front of my computer. I'm up. I'm moving. I'm in the plant. I'm checking samples. I'm doing all these things. He said, it doesn't make any sense. And I look at that, and we were just speaking yesterday, albeit from more than 6 feet apart. But we were saying that's again very draconian, where you're just saying this is how we're going to manage you as a remote worker. Like we don't trust you to do your job because we can't see you. Silliness, absolute silliness, and I think it's a huge leadership mistake.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And again, I think a lot of assumptions were shattered, and the progressive leader, the leader of a 2020-ish, I won't say even 21st century because we're in the third decade of it, of it, are going to need to be much more flexible at it's overused, where you talk about adaptability or where you talk about agility. You need to be a much more open-minded and really stop thinking that just because somebody clocks in and clocks out, we knew they weren't productive all the time, but they were 90% productive. People have no idea of how productive or not productive they are. And now you may find that, hey, the amount of work that they were getting done in 8 hours, they're getting done in 4. Or we can conduct that and we get better results. So does that mean you cut everybody's pay in half? or
hopefully not cut your workforce in half. Hopefully you use that other time for developing new products and services, right?
So so one of the things that you did bring up, I mean, obviously this is a good time to look at people that are home and do some reskilling. There's a lot of the online programs, or they're offering a lot of them for free. Give people incentives to learn those skills, to become up. I mean, it's not going to, from a training and development budget, some of these things that normally you would pay a lot of money for, or have to pay somebody to take time off, if they're getting paid anyway, or even partial pay, now's the time for individuals to upskill, but for employers to take advantage of being able to do that. There's so many opportunities within this. But going back to the pre-planning, looking at what happens going forward, is looking at, if working from home was not as productive as it could have been because you didn't have any time to plan it. And there's a million reasons why. People are struggling for bandwidth. Their desktops that they normally compute, they're working off their personal computer, at home. How things are stored in the cloud, how secure it is, all these things we were thrown into it, and there's a million vulnerability points.
Yep, absolutely.
But take the time now and say, if we were to allow you to work at home 2, 3, or 4 days a week, or instead of having a 60% workforce on a snow day in the Northeast, or on a hurricane day in the Southeast, what can we do to ensure that you're as productive or even more productive working from home than you are now? what are the technology needs? What's working? What's not working? What are you comfortable with? What can we help you with in setting up a home office? And because everybody's sort of left to their own devices, my stepdaughter ended up having to do some work, and they said, well, you can come in and take your desktop home, which also gets into the whole thing is, hey, they told her she had to come to, listen to this one, she had to come to work because they were dealing with a client, and they deal with finance. So, granted, so we can't send the spreadsheet to your Gmail, to your account, and and something wasn't working, so she couldn't get into the VPN. So you have to come in, and we're working at a distance. So she drives in. There's supposed to be 5 people on the team. 2 of those people did not come in, but were still on the call and had the spreadsheets. How did they get them? The manager said, well, they need to be on the call, so it's only this one time. We're going to send the information by the account. Now, the other problem is the client who they said they were working for, that insisted that all this confidentiality and security, was also working off his account because he couldn't get into his own business account email. So all of a sudden, all these rules are shattered. She's there with the manager. No one else is present.
Wow.
So they said, listen, you don't have to come into work anymore, but you can take your PC. You can take your desktop. Well, now it's not on a secure net. I mean, there's all these rules that they say, okay, now we're going back to the way it used to be. No, instead, what can we do that when you work from home, we have a VPN that works, you have an internet that has enough bandwidth that works. What can we do to help you make this productive? Because one is, we know that maybe there's not a pandemic, but there's going to be other crises like this.
Absolutely.
And the next time people are going to jump out, and hopefully we're going to be more preventive and not wait 2 and 3 months to take initiative. But there are going to be snowstorms. If climate, with climate change, the storms are going to be more violent. They're going to be more frequent. We're going to have either warm spells in the winter or bigger snowstorms in the summer. Whatever it is, we know that the weather's going to be screwed up. And there's going to be more incidences or traffic, there's going to be accidents that people just can't get in and out. And it's going to happen. So, I'm encouraging people to take this time and, tighten things up. And instead of saying, hey, we can't wait till we go back to work to get back to the way it was normal, because it's never going back to the way it was, is what can you do now to look forward? And they're minor. Some of these things are just minor, and they may cost nothing to very little.
Well, and I think that one of the things that you need to start with is you need to find out what your people's access to internet, and then what level of internet they've got access to. I mean, I was just on the phone with a client this morning, and she does not have Wi-Fi in her house. They have internet, but no Wi-Fi. And so she's got a company laptop. It's not doing her any good. And I wasn't going to get into, well, can't you plug that into your, but that was a whole
but you're right. I mean, there's little things like that, but even as simple as saying, how do we get connected? Because there's a lot of workers that are not digitally savvy. Exactly. And they call IT for every little thing. My key's stuck, and whatever it is. And now they're left at their own devices. How can you help them do that? But also, you talked about these are opportunities that new things come up. I was on a call the other day and made a connection, and he reached out to me. He says, "Hey, you may be interested in this." They have an app. I looked it up. It's actually called. I'm going to draw a blank. See if I still had it pulled up. I'm not checking my emails and texts, honestly. Everybody, I'll have to look it up. I think it was called Flex. But anyway, it was an app that you can plug into your phone. Now, taking it, we can do that now, and it's a hotspot. But it actually converts your phone into a high-speed internet.
Nice.
And there's the app you can buy as an individual. So there's VPN, and there's all, it's much more structured, and it's a higher speed. It's much more reliable. So I think the app was running, it was a paid app, so it was like $10 or something. But there are enterprise versions of that. So to make sure that everybody's has equal access, that has a more reliable bandwidth, that so you can either pay, you can help your employees pay for that, give them 25, $50 a month. And then I know some employers are going to say, well, how do I know they're not using that, their kids aren't using that to game? Don't worry about it. If the employee is productive and they're there when they need to be to get it done, if they're not using that extra bandwidth 100% for your business, it's a couple bucks. It's not a big deal. But there are new technology. There's a lot of devices. Most people have a smartphone. 96% of the population under 40 years old in this country owns a smartphone. Help them pay for an unlimited data plan, and give them a $10 app or less. And it's even less if you're doing it. And now you actually have a modem that they can operate on. So there's a million other ideas and techniques and things like that. So we've been going for about 38 minutes or so. What are some of the other, looking back, what are some of the things that employers right now, what are some of the policies they should be looking at? So we talk about the remote from work. If you come in to work sick, childcare, what are some of the other things that you would recommend an employer consider now?
I think that the next level from a proactive standpoint is, how do we deliver our training content? Can we take that all virtual? I'm not a huge fan of all the self-learning. Some people are, and I think there's a place for it. So I would be hesitant to advise a company, well, hey, go out and buy these packages where your people just log in and do things. But what types of technological capability do you have to not just run a meeting virtually, but to do virtual training?
There's some really good programs out there.
Yeah, there are. And so when you think about distributed workforces and workforces that work around the clock and everything else, I think about working with a trucking company a few years back and doing some training for them. And of course, you got warehouse running 3 different shifts. You got truckers who are on the road, and the truckers we actually did on a Saturday morning. So that was the only time that their entire driver workforce was home, was on the weekends. Right. Well, okay, great. But that's a perfect example. If we could run a few live sessions, tape one of them, and say, okay, you got to listen to this one, sort of thing. So I think we're going to have to get more flexible in how we deliver not just our work content, but training, development, anything else that we use to manage our people. How do we get that tech savvy and allow our people to get it on demand?
So and I'm going to put a little plug in here. It's a shameless plug.
It's your show. Go for it.
Yeah, there's we actually, and I've had this in my back pocket for a while. Wasn't sure where it fit. But obviously this created a time. So I have an e-learning library. I have my own course that we developed for recruiting in the age of Googlization, candidate experience. But in this other one, it's based on micro-learning. All the videos are like 5 to 10 minutes. Short attention span, get it, learn it, digest it, use it, apply. There's 2,600 different courses in this. Wow. There's HR things. There's sexual harassment. Gosh, we gotta pull everybody out for 4 hours and have our sexual harassment training. Do it online. Do it in little tidbits. You can monitor how long people do it. You can have a quiz afterward. You can give them credits and badges. There's it could be tied to there are so many things you can do. But there's interpersonal training. There's software training. There's leadership training. There are so many things that people can do, and although 2,600 courses is a lot, it's just scratching the surface of things that people can learn to do. And so we're not the end all and be all. But the reality is, it's $38 a person. The top fee, the very top fee, is $38 a person for the year. That they can get access to a full. There's a business library and there's a software library, so it's a little bit more if you do both. But if you're just looking at the soft skills, not the software, but the softer skills, the business skills, team building and supervising and leadership and interpersonal relationships, how to negotiate, how to sell, all those type of things. It's $38 a year per person. It's $3 a month.
Right.
What an opportunity to be able to do that. And they're designed. They're not having somebody come in and stand up. Where the day afterwards, people have a 50% retention rate. These were designed for modern day learners, and the only device you need is a smartphone, because they're also all mobile ready.
And I think that if a company is going to take advantage of something like that, they need to make sure that there's the option to test out of certain things. And I'll give you an example. So, I teach at Millersville, and so we recently had to update our harassment prevention and our abuse certification, and we're designated reporters, that kind of stuff, right? Well, you'd think being in HR for over 25 years, I know a little bit about harassment prevention. No, I couldn't test out. I had to sit there, let this thing run on the computer, answer questions, and you could not fast forward, so 3 hours later. And I talked with other people, and I know we're live streaming this, but people would turn it on and walk away from their computer, go do stuff, come back and answer the questions. And to me, again, I look at that and say, okay, come on. What are we trying to do? We're trying to ensure that people know the content. Well, if they can test out of it, they know the content. And so I think that if we're talking about ensuring our folks on key knowledge things, okay, let's not make them sit through things that they already know. Test out of it. Okay, check the box. You're good for the year or whatever. Move on, and allow them to spend their training time on the things where they really want to round themselves out, which is probably going to be in some of those non-technical, you want to call them the soft skills or whatever, where folks really want to spend their development time rather than on these sessions where you tell me I have to take them and I can't skip around them. Yeah,
for sure. So again, lots of opportunities. No big surprise. We're on the same page, in disagreements. But just as this is just a great time for leadership to take a step back. I know many of them are scrambling now. The other thing that we didn't hit on, and I'll sort of close with that, and then I want to talk about your book just a little bit, is or where was I going with that? Just kind of went in and out. Especially like for companies that are really, really busy now, healthcare. You talked about PTSD. So there's going to be post-traumatic stress, for a lot of workers. So being concerned going back into the workplace, go back into the war zone. But there's a lot of people that are getting burned out.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people that are going to need a break from this. So you look at, I don't know if you have a lot of healthcare clients.
I've got a daughter who's a nurse right now. So,
So the challenge is when this is over, and it's not going to be over, there's going to be a backlog. So how long can you push everyone? Think about what's the scheduling, what can be done differently, what can be done remote. What are some technologies? Go ahead. You were going to say something.
I think that one of the things that needs to start, and that's with our benefits plans and these insurance companies covering telemedicine. A lot of them still won't cover a telemedicine appointment, and in fact, we just
even
got
Medicare covers telemedicine.
Yeah, we just got a note from one of our providers that said, "Hey, during the time of this crisis, XYZ insurance company is going to allow telehealth options. Please sign here, blah, blah," right? I'm thinking, okay, so why should I get myself off my sick bed to go to a doctor when I could talk to my doc as easy as I'm talking to you, and I could give him or her my symptoms. I could take my own temperature at home. I could even take my own blood pressure at home. Really, when you go to the doc, that's the first two things they do.
Right.
And then they listen to your symptoms. Okay, yeah, here's your script, and off you go. And so I think there are things there that are going to have to change. And I think that our people, circling back around to the workplace, our people are going to demand those kinds of options. Now, the challenge for the healthcare worker is when you think about peak seasons. So think about the holiday time, right? And the shipping companies go crazy and retail goes crazy because everyone's buying. But they know January 2nd is coming. And when January 2nd comes, we go, that's over with. We don't know when this is going to be over. And we're taxing our healthcare workers right now. And to be sure, they're stepping up.
Oh, absolutely.
And yet, right?
And to all the healthcare workers, first responders, everybody's out there. Yeah, you got it.
But at the same time, they're going to need a break when things start to level back out again. And how do we do that? We can't obviously allow them all to take a week off or 2 weeks off. But what are we going to do to cycle them through to get their batteries recharged again? Because they're not just physically exhausted; they're emotionally exhausted. I mean, think about going to work every day and wondering, am I caring for someone who's ill with COVID that I could catch? I don't have the supplies I need, or I don't have the PPE I need, whatever it happens to be, and just the mental toll that can lay on someone. And in talking with my daughter, she is as much mentally tired as anything else right now. She says, Dad,
I can imagine.
We're just, when she gets to her apartment at night, she just kind of collapses, and she's like, I don't have energy to watch a show, or I just want to just veg because of the mental toll. And so, I think we have to look at the robustness of our employee assistance programs, and are folks going to need that service for a period of time to help them decompress after being on the front lines of this.
Right. And some of it's just practical. I mean, it's going to be workforce management, because you're going to have to give these people a break, because even if they somehow came up with this miracle and we eradicated COVID-19, didn't exist anymore. We're just going to go back to the annual flu till the next one. But
sure.
We're just going to go back to our routine. The challenge is there's now this pent-up demand to get back to regular healthcare. I mean, if you called for a dermatology appointment, a colonoscopy, you waited 6 months or a year at least. Now it's just completely backlogged.
Well, yeah, and they're I think one of the challenges on that front, and I'll tie this into the workforce, is I was reading an article the other day where, of course, they're not allowing any elective procedures, and this one gentleman was scheduled to have a cancerous tumor removed, and they deemed that non-essential.
Right.
So first off, as a human, I'm thinking, how is that non-essential, right? Or how is that elective? Excuse me. But so to your point, that even just the simple things like, I got to get my dentist rescheduled and my eye exam, and all those little things our workers are going to be worried about. Now you've got those bigger things that they've had these appointments pushed off, and how flexible can we be with them, recognizing that we don't want to say, well, you just had 3 weeks off. No, they didn't. They were working from home and couldn't go do anything but shop for groceries. So,
but the flip side of that is the workers, the healthcare workers who have been running on these, running for 2, 3, 4 months with COVID-19, are now saying, okay, we're going back to our normal med surge. We're going back to our normal office hours. You can come in and we're going to see and we're going to do all these things. Hey, we need a break. So, all the doctor offices, all the family practices, all the specialists, they can't shut down.
Right. And give people,
I mean, there's already delays in getting surgery. Now you have a backlog. So, and it's not something that we can manufacture. I mean, you can graduate like they did NYU, graduated med students 3 months early.
Right.
So, okay, you can get that surge that way, but there's no way to compress 10 and 12 years of learning, into something overnight. So it's going to be a challenge. So you and I will be busy for a while.
And we can only hope, right?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, I want to pull this up again before we close out. This is your book, which we talked about before. You can get it at, let me see, I think I can do this. But while I'm looking for the banner so people can see where to get it, tell us tell everybody what the book is about and why you wrote it.
Sure. So it really came. I was never one of these folks who thought, I want to write a book. It just happened. I write pretty regularly as you do, and realized that, gosh, I got a lot of content here, and if I can sew it together, there's the makings of a really good guide for today's business executive, and that's how strategic HR came to be. And really, it's been described as a go-to resource. In fact, I had a lady, I was giving a talk just a week before the lockdown began here, and she said, Ed, I started reading your book and I had to put it down. It made me so mad. I said, why is that? Well, she was referring to my introduction, and as you mentioned, actually, you're quoted on the back cover that I don't pull any punches. I mean, this is HR needs a wake-up call. And so there is language in my book that if you are very thin-skinned as an HR person, you're probably going to be very angry with me. And she said, Ed, I had to put it down. And then I realized after a couple of days, you know what, I'm mad because he's right. And so she picked it up, started reading through it, and someone had come into her office with a challenge, and she said, that I think that's a topic later in the book. She said, I flipped back, I found the chapter, read it, and it worked. It solved my problem. And gosh, you can't ask for a better testimonial. And that's what I'm hearing from the results, if you will, as they're coming in from folks that have read the book, whether they are HR practitioners or the business executives that manage them. They're saying, Ed, there's so much good stuff in here. It's not nuts and bolts HR. You're not going to see a chapter on how to write a job description or how to do a performance review. This is how, the things that you and I talk about when we get together, Ira, the larger HR strategy questions that really allow HR to drive business results. And that's what I consider this book to be, is a handbook for turning your HR function away from being compliance police and become a function that drives value for your company.
Well, it couldn't have come at a better time, because we're talking about strategy, everything we talked about, whether, again, if you're looking at policies and benefits and things, they're certainly tactical to some degree, but you really need to take a step back and look at that whole picture of what that is, and what is our strategy, and what is our workforce management going to look like, and how's this going to affect recruitment and engagement. How are we going to build a truly focus on company culture, because people are going to really be looking for that now. And so there's a lot of opportunity. So great timing. Put it up one more time there.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it. Hey, Ed, it's always good to talk to you.
It is. Time always flies.
I appreciate you being here, and a lot of good conversation today, and hopefully people will take the advice. So make sure you get Strategic HR. You can contact Ed at edkrow.com. A couple other announcements before we sign up. I've got to show my book, of course. Recruiting in the Age of Googlization. You won't get that at edkrow.com, but you can go to, let me see if I can get the right banner up here real quick. There it is. You actually can get a free copy at join.googlizationnation.com. So if you go to, just type into your URL, join.googlizationnation.com, you just pay for the shipping. You'll immediately get the digital copy, and then you get the paper copy in 5 to 7 days, maybe 7 to 14 days, the way things are going.
Even current events,
these things. And also, I got one last thing to show everybody here. And Ed, I hope you'll do that too. I don't think you're in there, and not gonna get that part off. Too many bells and whistles here. Again, I create a lot of content, interview a lot of people like Ed on an ongoing basis. Googlization Nation, it's sort of my newsletter, but it's free. In that, you get announcements when I'm doing these, the live streams. We have our weekly podcast on Geek Skeezers and Googlization. That Ed, you were on that a couple months ago, so we talked about that before the book came out. So Googlization Nation, just get updates about podcasts, live streams, articles, free resources, and hoping to do some webinars. So you'll have that. And then I started a Slack channel, and again, it was just more kind of a more fluid, more dynamic way. I started it partly because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of consultants, there's a lot of individuals that are out there, just to have the way for them to connect. And every morning I go on and say hello and see if anybody needs anything. And there's only we got a couple dozen in there now, but hopefully we'll have a large community, and it'll just be a way for people to check in, not necessarily vent, but again, get new ideas that other people have, and see how everybody's doing. So those are both free. You can you can't click on these, but you can go to put them in your URL, and hopefully I'll see you on the inside there. Other than that, any final words before we sign off here, Ed?
Well, I appreciate you having me as always, and I would tell our listeners that if you've liked something that Ira or I have said today, we both love to get out in front of crowds when we're allowed to do so again, and
maybe a virtual crowd. For sure.
Virtual crowds, absolutely. We both love to speak, and certainly are open to invitations to impact your next event.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Appreciate it. So, Ed, stay safe, stay healthy,
Absolutely.
enjoy the family while you're there, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, soon. Thanks, Ira.
Okay, thanks.